For coming to our best practices in non-residential setting session, and we are going to go ahead and get started. So I would just like to thank our speakers today. We have Dustin Erickson, who's the Executive Director of CTA Community Support, and we are thrilled to have him here. And we'd like to extend a thank you for him being willing to come and talk about his experience working with the state and going through a transformation in services. And we're also thrilled to have Tricia Jones-Parkin, who is the Employment First Administrator with DSPD. She's worked at DSPD since 2000, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. She was instrumental in the passage of the Employment First legislation, and we are just very lucky as a state to have her working for DSPD and on behalf of people with disabilities. So we'd like to say thank you to them both, and I will turn the time over to them. And just as a quick reminder, we have Lindsay here in the back who, if you have questions or comments, please make sure to use the microphone. Just raise your hand and she will run it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. So, like Marianne said, I'm Tricia, and I do work for DSPD. So this is about, I'm going to use our pointer thing, as about as high tech as Dustin as I get. When they gave us kind of the session description about avoiding pitfalls, we both thought of the Atari game, Pitfall. It was both our favorites, oddly. And so this is our cover. And then as we were trying to put together the slideshow, we were like, well, I can't really do anything fancy or slidey. So 80s Atari is about where we're at in terms of anything fun, electronic. So anyway, I just kind of want to talk about from my side as the state in terms of facilitating the transformation. I do not currently work for a provider. That's where I got my start. I supported folks residentially, and then I became a support coordinator, and then I fell in love with the power of employment and people being able to not live in poverty and have a life that was pretty meaningful based on what employment could provide and understanding Social Security benefits. So I'm going to kind of talk about it from my perspective as far as the global efforts that we've done around transformation and what's happening. And then Dustin's going to kind of speak to their experience in probably a more meaningful way, because it's certainly just nuts and bolts, what we did, how we've done it. But we wanted to give you the perspective of both. So Serena talked a little bit about what provider transformation was today in her keynote, but really this is kind of, as I looked through what's on the ODEP website and really what the process is, it really is shifting services away from segregated sheltered work and non-work programs in terms of how the Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program has offered it and designed it. And it looks at the transformation around attitude changes, financing services, all those kinds of things that she talked about. I want to just say, really, in terms of the provider transformation work, there's certainly been agencies and states, and I found research clear into the early 90s where providers were transforming those services, and a lot of those folks are the ones providing technical assistance to states now and to providers. But so we really didn't know a lot about it until we started working with the Office of Disability Employment Policy as the EFS LMP state. That stands for Employment First State Leadership Mentoring Program. And it's a technical assistance partnership with the Office of Disability Employment Policy. So in our first year of provider transformation, we worked with CTA and Work Activity Center. In year 2, we've worked with Chrysalis and Park. In year 3, so that's this current year that just ended, we've worked with Cash Employment and Training Center and Northeastern Services. So that's just kind of a framework of the providers who are going through this process now. And Dustin was the guinea pig willing to kind of talk about his experience in this presentation. So in terms of the process, this is kind of what it's looked like, or the framework. And so any of the providers in the room, feel free to kind of speak up and say, oh, you missed this part, or but I really had to kind of think about the process and what it looked like. So in year 1, so what happens is ODEP has these subject matter experts that they have found throughout the state or throughout the country that have been doing this work, that transform their own agencies, that really have good tools because they did them themselves, and they made them available to states through this technical assistance partnership. So We looked at the resources available for that and felt like we could support 2 providers each year to start that process. So the first year is really kind of a self-analysis. So the subject matter expert comes out, they see what you're doing, they make some recommendations, they talk about your processes, and they help you kind of figure out what it's going to take to get to the next level or some ways that you can do something different. So it's that self-analysis. And this is really kind of, I was privileged enough to be able to sit on these sessions. The providers felt really honored that they trusted me enough to be part of that process and kind of hear where some of those challenges are. It wasn't always easy on the state side, right? Because most of it was, well, this is what you paid us to do. So we have work to do too on the state side, but that was really great for me to hear as a state person, then to go back to my leadership folks and be able to shape things on that end. It really facilitates an internal analysis of the agency's readiness, resources, all of that kind of thing, and then creating a strategic planning template. So would you say that first year doesn't feel like you make a lot of progress, but it's really kind of thinking about how are we going to do this? How are we going to get staff in shape? How are we going to talk to families? It's really kind of thinking about what that will look like. And the whole model of it is based on this Baldrige Excellence Framework. So it's a systems approach. And you can actually find this on ODEP's website. They have the criteria for performance excellence that anybody can access and go through. It can be a little confusing if you don't have somebody to kind of help you through it. And so that was one of the great things that the providers had access to, was these subject matter experts to help them build their plan. So year 2 is to look at those action items and figure out what you're going to implement, what you can do. So that year 2 is really, it might be the same subject matter expert, or based on what you've developed, it might be somebody different. We actually had that happen with Chrysalis and Park when they kind of went through their process with their subject matter expert that did the planning piece. Because of the unique needs of their agency, we found a different subject matter expert that's really been able to help them move forward because their experiences were more similar. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, Mark, later, but so it could be the same person. Dustin, their team used the same subject matter experts throughout their process. And I believe work activities, most of them have kind of kept with the same one, depending on what their needs were. But we start looking at measuring outcomes and data, and then continue to receive technical assistance from those subject matter experts, revisiting their plan, keeping them on course. And I don't know how much of them are looking at those individual plans, but that's kind of what the subject matter expert does. Is like, are you still working on that, or did you get stuck? So there's some regular check-ins, and then more resources that come along as they go. So the other piece, and this is, I don't expect you to read all this, it's really small, but the other piece after the first year that providers are involved in this process is we start collecting data. So we start saying, okay, you've got your plan in place, you've got some action items, now we need you to start measuring those things and reporting it to Tricia, me, the employment first person, that then goes on to ODEP. So they kind of collect that across states to make sure that what they're doing makes sense. So these are all the kind of data points that we're looking at, and you can see it really is in line with the settings rule, right? It's not just about employment, it's about who is spending time in the community, how long did it take them to transition from the traditional services into employment, or from facility-based day services, how much time they're spending in the community. So these are all things that the providers are collecting and submitting to me quarterly, and then I'm sharing that with ODEP. At this point, that's as far as the data is going. It's not going into the state or anything like that. It's mostly just for ODEP to be able to say, this is the value of the technical assistance. I actually think these are great data points that the state could use in terms of as we move forward to really measure our progress towards the settings role and implementation around community-based services. So it's nice to have this template in place. I think another piece that's related that's important to think about is, we have these EFS-LMP resources, but we have also had some additional capacity building efforts that DSPD has invested in and that we've been able to get grants for. So we've done some provider transformation webinars that we offered to everybody across the board that we've sent out to support coordinators, providers, family members, with resources from EFS-LMP, but really saying anybody can learn from these webinars, and we've recorded those and shared them. There's the community of practice that EFS-LMP has that folks can get involved in. There was a provider transformation series. Is anyone in the room, did they get involved in that series of provider transformation webinars that just came out? A couple of you guys, great. I felt they were really, really helpful. Again, they're trying to figure out, we know we can't give the intense TA to all of the providers, but we can help with some of these tools. And they put together this incredible guidebook that's available. And because we're a provider transformation state, we were able to offer that to more providers. DSPD also offered an organizational leadership series that Griffin Hammis put together that was broader than just community HCBS or employment. It was really about organizational change, getting connected to your community, and we had quite a few folks participate in that. We did that, I think we wrapped it up at beginning of 2017, I think. So there was a 6-part series. We've had customized employment demonstration projects going on since 2013. And while that's really focused on discovery and employment, those elements of discovery can also be applied to helping a person have a life in the community and figuring out what things they're interested in and applying those principles. So we've had partnerships with the DD councils, funded part of those projects. VR has helped fund some of those projects so that we could have a broader reach, and we continue to fund the customized employment demonstration projects. We have projects going on now in Blanding, so San Juan County, St. George and Cedar, Logan, the Wasatch Front, across several places. So we've really tried hard to cover the state. We haven't reached all of the areas, and we're trying to do that. So that's another way to get involved and get better tools to improve employment and community-based opportunities. We also have our Partnerships in Employment Systems Change Grant. We're 1 year in. It's a 5-year grant funded through Administration and Community Living, same agency or entity that Serena works for, and it's focusing on school to work. So as adult service agencies, right, we're saying people need to be in the community, we want people to have jobs. What does school prepare kids for with most significant disabilities? Is it that? My experience is not that all the time. So really trying hard to connect with schools and help them have those opportunities, connect with providers, connecting with agencies, teaching. We're teaching the educators, the transition teachers about customized employment and discovery so that they could use that as an assessment in schools. And we're seeing some incredible outcomes. We're partnering with workforce, so WIOA counselors, VR counselors, support coordinators, independent living centers. We're bringing them to the table. I know I'm missing a bunch. And we happily have our TASH Transcend Yes Center. It's like this amazing mixture of great folks here with us this week, providing technical assistance that we get to work with over the next 5 years. So it's very exciting, great resources for our state, and I'm excited to see what we do. So those are kind of some of the other efforts that can feed into the transformation piece. I didn't want to go through this presentation without giving credit to the incredible subject matter experts that are not here today, but have given just some great words of wisdom, whether it's through a PowerPoint of theirs or nuggets that I've pulled out and written down somewhere when I was doing work with them or driving in the car or whatever it was. So I wanted to just kind of share a couple of those with you. Sarah Murphy is out of Transcend in San Francisco and runs a community-based program in the heart of San Francisco, and I had the opportunity to go visit and see what they're up to, and it's pretty incredible. And just a brilliant woman in terms of planning and getting everybody to the table and thinking about how they can do things differently. So these are some of her nuggets of wisdom. Things need to be goal-oriented, person-centered, strengthen the employability skills, build community and address non-work needs. I think that's something I've certainly learned through this process. I've always been so focused on employment, not realizing that people also need more of a life in the community, and that needs to be addressed and put together. Needs to be tailored to a person's needs, flexible and responsive, and that individualized does not mean one-on-one. And she has a really great kind of ratio in terms of how she helps people start thinking about getting people in the community differently. Having a mix of folks who might use a chair, who might need more support, with somebody who's a little bit more independent because they all have an interest in a certain activity or getting to learn to do something more, and just some great recommendations that way. So those are some tips from Sarah. Gail Fanjoy is another wonderful subject matter expert. out of Maine. And she's been providing community-based services, I think early 90s is when they transformed their agency. And we had the opportunity actually this week to go and spend time in Maine and see how KFI provides services. And she's provided several webinars for us and has been to Utah a couple of times working with providers. But just recently she did a session on shifting from caregiving to community instruction, and she talked about guided community exploration, the goal being who will you meet there versus outings or disability tourism. Like, what is the point? Who are we going to talk to versus keeping somebody from talking to somebody, which happens. How do we get this person connected to who else is interested in this beekeeping group or whatever it might be. I'm on beekeeping. I think it's like the third time I've referenced it today. Thinking of Kelly. She's our resident beekeeper. Some other great, Tom Wilds is out of St. John's, which is what is his claim to fame? The Church of the Presidents, right? And they're in several states, and they had big buildings, lots of fundraising stuff. And Barbara Bush did this, and somebody's other wife did that, and very, very high profile. And so some of the pieces that he talks about are change being a continuous evolution. The mission should be your guide. Communicating a culture of inclusion. Expectations are key. Employment is the outcome, and leadership is your role. I think this is another really important piece that he talked about, or that he's shared in multiple presentations that I've been involved in with him. If you don't have the core values embedded into your vision and mission, and your board and leadership embracing them in action and deed, then you are not ready for true systems transformation. And I'm excited for Dustin to kind of talk about that in his presentation. Ashley Lance really talks about celebrating and sharing those successes. When Work Activity Center ended one of their contracts, she sent them cookies because she was so excited for the work that they were doing. And that's really a strength of hers, is kind of celebrating those successes and learning from the speed bumps. Telling people what's going on in your agency, those monthly meetings, sharing success with the office. And all of the employment or the subject matter experts will tell you that you have to treat those job developers like gold, surgeons, all of those kinds of things. They really are key to moving folks out of the building in terms of work. Really quick, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, I think, in the session after this. Like Serena said, you can't talk about provider transformation without thinking about rates and reimbursement. So part of the EFS LMP work was us doing what's called Vision Quest. I'm not going to get into what that means. It's just it's a name that they used. But it really is an intense focus on a particular systems change piece that the state wants to focus on. So we looked at rates and reimbursement restructuring, and we've been working on that in the whole 3 years that we've been partnering with EFS LMP. And this is what we've come up with. So we kind of came up with an initial template or a set of service descriptions. And then the next year we spent engaging the providers involved in transformation in the first 2 years, because we were pretty much done with it by the time Cash and Ness came on board. Though Neil he got into those meetings, he invited himself, it was great, worked out. And then he started doing transformation. It worked beautifully. But so we really said, we know that you're working on this and you're trying to figure out how to do things differently, so we want you to come to the table and help us really refine these service descriptions. So we came up with these new service descriptions. We're doing all the prep work to have them to make an amendment to the current HCBS waiver to begin July of 2018. And these are the services that we're going to be implementing. Some of these things VR will be the primary funder for, but we wanted to build them into the waiver in case, right? We know that they have had to go on order selection in the past, or at some point we might decide, it really does make sense for us to pay for this piece and you pay for this piece, and to have the capacity to do that. So we have exploration. There is a little kind of blurb about each of these service descriptions. We developed, had our subject matter expert develop kind of a one-pager. I was going to pass it out, but you're welcome to come and grab it before the next session. Exploration. Pre-employment skill building, that's a 2-year time limit, so people don't get stuck getting ready forever. Work strategy assessments, you're familiar with those. job development, and on the other side of that, if somebody has a job for a while but wants some career advancement, having a job developer level staff person be able to come in and help navigate some career advancement in that current position. Ongoing job coaching and personal assistance. We really heard as we were working with providers that the decreased hourly rate that occurs if somebody needs more than an hour of support is really, really tough. So that is going away. That is going to stay the same hourly fee across each hour the person's getting supported. Paying for discovery, and then in line with that would be customized employment planning and development. Integrated community learning, that's essentially an alternative to center-based day services with small groups. And then small group supported employment will be time limited, so 24-month time limit, because the goal is one person, one job. But we know that sometimes people need more experiences, or there's just times in their lives that might make sense. But it has so it has group size limits and then earning limits, so nobody can earn sub-minimum wage in any of these services. So everything has to be at least minimum wage or better, and community-based, so nothing happening in buildings. So that's what's coming. We're pretty excited about it. We've worked really, really hard on the rates, and we're hoping that it'll give us what we need to move forward. So I'm going to turn the time over to you.
About our journey with provider transformation that started for us a few years ago. And if you haven't noticed with Tricia, her enthusiasm for employment is just contagious, and so it's been very fun hanging out with her the last couple of years. Before I start, I just wanted to start with a few things that we've only just begun this, even though it started a few years ago. I think we're just starting to see the impacts in this for our organization, for the people that we support. And there's certainly people in here that know things about CTA, and I'm not standing up here to say that we're perfect and do everything right and that we haven't made mistakes, because we do, and we will continue to do so. But I think that we have made some progress the last couple of years as we've participated in this. And I will also say that we still do have some site-based services. We've made some big changes there, and we have significantly fewer people in our site-based services, but just wanted to start off by saying that. Just a little bit about myself. I've been at CTA for 15 years, and prior to that I worked for another organization, and that's kind of where I grew up, right? As I worked there, it was a no-no we would have never opened any type of segregated environment, a day hab place or sheltered work or anything like that. That was just kind of the philosophy that was instilled in myself. And I'm not suggesting that if you run those, you're bad people, but that's just the way I was taught. And but as the recession came about 7, 8, 9 years ago, at CTA, we took some pretty hard knocks, like a lot of the providers in this room. We took some pretty significant cuts, and it made us change some things in ways that we did things in our organization. And so whether it's a good excuse or not, that's how we started running day programs again. And there were some good things that happened, I think, for folks as we opened day programs. I felt like our community-based stuff was really good van programs, kind of cruising around, not doing much. Good mall programs, you probably have all run them, or are running them maybe, I don't know. And so I felt like for some of the people we support, when we first started our biggest day program, there was a lot of enthusiasm around that. And we had a big open house, and DSPD was there, and everybody was really excited about it. And I think it, for a little while, it did what it was supposed to do, and it helped us kind of survive some of those cuts. And the reason why I bring that up is as transformation started to happen, we had actually identified on our strategic plan that we just felt like, as the leadership of our organization, that we needed to get back to employment. And so the timing was kind of perfect. Paul Smith asked if we could go to lunch. Usually that meant I was in trouble for something, if he wanted to go to lunch. But we met, and he told us about this and asked us if we would participate. And I said, well, yeah, we'll do that. We were going to start that this fall, which was about 6 months after I met with him anyway. And so that's how it all started. I think it was just kind of good timing. And so we had the opportunity to participate in ODEP with the transformation. And the first couple of meetings are a little rough. Maybe some of the providers that in here, you probably experienced that. And this first bullet, promote a culture where it is expected to be critical of the services that you provide. I think it's really important in this field and in life to just kind of be able to admit it if you suck. And I don't think our program sucked necessarily, and I don't mean that disrespectful to our staff or anything like that. We have a lot of really good staff, and I think we were doing some good things, but that's not where we really wanted to be. And so I think that it's healthy to be able to look at what you're doing and say, is it the right thing to do? And we felt like it wasn't. And so we started participating. Let's see if I can make this thing move. Yes. Okay. So sorry, I am old school. You see all the purple writing? That was at 11 o'clock last night. That's when I wrote this out. So what I learned as we started this is that we weren't the only ones who thought we sucked. When they came out to do technical assistance, they kind of told us that a little bit in a really nice way, kind of, but it was hard. Even though you kind of admit to yourself that we want to change some things and we can do better, it's kind of hard to have people tell you that you're not doing things the best way. And but we came into this just thinking we just want to improve things. We want to provide better services. So we were certainly open to it, but it is a little bit tough to start that. And now Tricia brought up Gail Fanjoy, and that was the first person that we worked with. And now when I see her, I just saw her a couple weeks ago, it's all hugs, and we've been out there and met several times, and I've learned a ton from Gail. And so, but the first time she went out to our biggest day program, it was hard. Sally's here shaking her head. We were a little offended, even though we knew what she was saying was true. And so I want to tell you some of the things that we learned from her, and some of these points are what we learned from Gail the first year. We can sit and make excuses all day long about how we can't do things differently because of money, right? We get DSG funding or whatever it is for our program. Gail taught me that you're getting money. You're getting some money. It may not be all the money you need. Transportation's expensive. If we're talking about barriers and pitfalls, transportation is a major issue for all of us, and we don't have the solutions to that yet, but that's there. But we are getting some money, and so Gail taught us to kind of use our day program as a hub, where people are still coming. That's what we're funded to do. We shouldn't think that we're providing bad services, because our system pays for folks to have these types of services. Until we get some of these new service descriptions going, we are doing what we're paid to do technically by the contract, right? Even if we don't feel like it's the right thing. So we just, and that really made me think about things. And so we started to think along those lines a little bit, just having people come and they can go out in smaller groups or by themselves and experience different things in the community. That was kind of one of the first things that we started to focus on. And then we started asking ourselves, how do we stop the cycle of providing segregated services? We had the opportunity, which I think is actually the best thing that we were able to do with ODAP and transformation is we were able to take myself and Sally and Matt, two of our directors, out to Maine, and we went with some folks from DSPD as well, and we were able to visit and see how they're providing services. And one of the nights that we were there towards the end of the trip, we had a conversation, the three of us, and we started talking about, we're going to do this. We're going to close our site-based programs eventually. And that was kind of that was the point. We decided it's time to really jump into this. And I kind of had this thought of, our organization serves a lot of children in different capacities. We do professional parenting. We do after-school programs for kids with autism, and that's been a really good service, I think, in our state. It's kept a lot of kids out of group homes and more intensive types of services. And I had this thought that I just couldn't quite kick, that if we don't start doing things differently for adults that we support, down the road in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to triple the size of our day programs, because most of the children that we support as they grow and get out of school, they're happy with our services, and oftentimes they'll stay with us. And so it made me feel like we really need to do something quickly, and we can't wait, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years to start this process. And so we decided that we were going to do this quickly. And so we decided to focus on customized employment. That's one of the things that we're really working on now, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. It was interesting. I was just at a conference with Tricia, actually, in Idaho, and one of the really good things about this conference is you're able to talk with providers across the country. And so I had the opportunity to talk with a gentleman from Ohio. And we actually went fishing one afternoon. It's my kind of conference. It's on a river, on a lodge. It's a beautiful thing. And so he wanted to go fly fishing with us one afternoon. And so we were talking with him, and I was amazed at the efforts his organization had made to start transforming their services. They were a provider that served over 300 people in site-based services in Ohio, and decided that they were going to make all their services community-based. And in doing so, they lost 2/3 of their business. 200 people went somewhere else for services, but they stuck to what they believed in their core values. And I don't know if I could have done that, but I think it's pretty admirable that they did that. So I'll just share with you what we're doing now. In starting this, one of the big things that I think all of us providers are faced with is, how do we train our workforce to provide employment services? That's a big deal, and we've made some progress in the last couple of years across our state with reducing turnover with our direct support staff, and I think that that's helping us some, but it still is hard to get people trained, and I think you know, that's probably a challenge that we're going to have in our state, is how do we look at some train-the-trainer models where we can get folks out to train our staff in this. I think those will be some fun discussions here in the next couple of years, but we've really focused on that. We have over 30 staff now that we've trained and certified to provide employment, and continue to try to increase that. And I'll pass this around, and if anybody's interested in it, it's called the Plan for Inclusion. One of the things that our leadership team developed as we decided to start closing our program was feeling like we needed to, because we decided to do it in a short period of time. We moved about 70 people that we support out of the day program within a 4-month period of time into community-based services, and so we decided we needed to have some things in place to do that. So we developed this. It's called Plan for Inclusion. If you're wanting to look at it, I didn't make copies, but I'll pass it around, and if you're interested in a copy, I can get your email address after and send it to you. Real quick, what it is we probably stole a bunch of stuff from person-centered planning, things that have been floating around for years, maybe. I hope not. I hope we won't get in trouble. But what we're trying to do is just kind of assess non-negotiables, important things to people, things that they like to do, places they like to go, dreams they have, daily schedules. We incorporated some things from employment and discovery, looking at themes. And then we have one of the really cool things is a list of 20. These are 20 places where people with similar themes work, play, or hang out. And so we went through this process with each of the people we support, and I'll pass that around, and you're welcome to get a copy of that later from me if you want. But that was one of the important things that we did as we went through this process. The other thing that we had to do is we had to evaluate our current staff strengths and kind of realign some staffing responsibilities. So what we ended up doing with some of our supervisory staff and staff in our day program was getting them certified to do employment, and having them work with folks in a different way. So that was hard, and it's hard to go into a day program. We had a lot of pride in our art program. We support some people with autism with real challenging behavior, and art had become a way to express themselves, and they had art shows and were selling their art, but it was in a segregated environment. We had to close that, and I was over there the day that our supervisor that ran that is an artist, And that was really hard for him. And I mean, he sat slumped in a chair in the corner when I was walking through, because I was meeting with the maintenance guys saying, build some offices here. We're going to move some of our administrative stuff out here. And it was hard. He was sulking, and I felt bad for him, but I just said, you have till tomorrow to get your stuff out of here. We need to get on with it. And so it was hard, but now he is doing employment, and he's helped the same. We supported a woman that was very challenging behaviors and into art, and he's helped her find a studio out in the community where she can do her art. And you know, we've had to help kind of get that going, but we think that eventually she's going to make connections with other artists that's in the art community, and eventually she'll be sharing space with other artists. And we think that that's, you know, how we need to do things moving forward. So we set a date. So we happen to between February and the end of May of 2016 is when we transitioned roughly 70 folks into community-based and more employment types of services. And you know, you can debate, you can go back and forth. I've heard of providers that take several years to do this, and we actually ended up just kind of speeding it up as we went, because it was going well, and I think there was a real momentum there. And so I think for us that was the right decision. And some people might say, well, you know, you don't have as many people as employed as you should, or maybe you should have started working with one person at a time and got employment and moved them out and then started focusing on somebody else. But I just personally believe that if we would have approached it that way, that our day programs probably wouldn't have changed significantly. I think we would have always found some type of barrier to keep people there. And so that worked for us. It might not work for everybody. So since we've closed in May, now let me be forthright about this. We do still support some people at that day program. We support people that live with other providers there, or live with their families, and we are now using that more like the hub, and people are coming and they're out doing things in the community, and we're working on employment out of there. Those pieces we still have not figured out everything. I think it's like everybody else. I think the new service descriptions will help us with that, but that's kind of, we needed to work with that first group first, and now we'll transition into supporting these other folks with that. I can say that since the end of May, since we changed services, that of those 70 people, we've supported 5 people to find jobs. So maybe you're thinking that's good, and maybe you're thinking that's bad. It just is what it is. And for me, I think that that's pretty good over the course of a few months, that we've supported people to find paid work, and so we'll continue to do that. We also have, 20 or 30 of those, closer to 30 of those folks that we're doing work strategy assessments on, or we've started discovery. We're working with Voc Rehab. So we are in process with most of those folks. Challenges. Employment takes time. It's going to take a long time to support people. Somebody mentioned earlier, is the community ready to do this? I think that we have a lot of work to do with the community in demonstrating that people we support can work and contribute to their businesses. Can we be on the same page already? And I'm sure, I think that this conference is maybe one way of starting to kind of bridge that a little bit. But the health department has things that they're working on. DSPD is working on things. We have concerns as providers, and sometimes it's a little nebulous about what really is expected. Are sheltered workshops going away, or are they not? And sometimes people just won't say that. And that would make our lives a little easier if they would sometimes, but as you can, as we've learned earlier today, it doesn't necessarily say that. So I think those are some questions that you need to, Serena Lowe, I think, did a good job at the end of saying what she thinks will be available for people in the future. So I think that we're getting closer on the same page as we've worked through this, and as we've done the self-assessments of our services and those types of things. And but I hope that will get a little better as we move forward. And Tricia already talked about this, the new service descriptions. And you might be asking yourselves, how did you do this? We just decided that we're going to do it. And so we met with the SPD and said we're moving forward with this, and we're going to keep the funding that we have in place for the folks that we're supporting, and we're just going to make it work from that funding. We didn't ask for new money, but we just asked to use our site-based money in the community and in their homes until we get new options in place, and DSPD was fine with that. I was kind of daring them to say no, but they said yes. And staff and parents, it's been hard, but we lost a couple of staff, but not very many. Not as many as I expected that would leave the day program. And, they had kind of their set, 9 to 5 jobs, and we didn't see many people leave. In fact, they're thriving working with the same folks, but in their homes. Out of the 70 folks, I was really worried that we would lose some of the people we support might want to go to other places for day services. So far, we've only had one, and it happened to be the daughter of a board member. But we supported that, and I was completely honest with her and just said, we support you in taking your daughter to receive services somewhere else. We were asked if we would allow her to still come to the day program because we still have it. We're going to use the building in other capacities, and we felt really strongly that if we say yes to this, that we will then have to say yes to other people as they ask. And so we've been pretty firm about that and are going to stay the course that we're on right now. But for the most part, parents have been very supportive. When we had parent meetings, I had a concerned parent. We had a couple of concerned parents that had questions. There was one that was so excited, gave me a hug and asked me if I'd run for president of the United States, which I was not expecting from her. I didn't know that we would make her that she would be satisfied with that. But so in closing, I don't think we have much time left, but what I would say is we can find all kinds of reasons to not do something, but I think that at the end of the day, and this is what we told our board, I think we have a great opportunity with the settings rule. If you're a provider that wants to change how you deliver services, you can use the settings rule as the excuse if you need to, right? It's there. What we presented to our board is that we're doing this because federal guidelines are changing. This was before the extension. But beyond that, even if that changes, we feel like it's the right thing to do, and so we're going to move forward with it, and our board was supportive of that. The other thing that I would say is if you're supporting people and they get jobs, even if it's not their dream job, celebrate the hell out of that. Because it's a start, and none of us started with our dream jobs. I still haven't. I want to be a fly fishing guide when I grow up. But celebrate that and let your staff see it, because it's important as we move forward. Just a couple of things. I know I only have like 2 minutes. I'll be super fast. At this conference that I went to a couple of weeks ago, there was a presenter, Michael Wrench is his name, and he's kind of known back east as the hatchet man. He comes into provider organizations and takes them over as they're ready to go under or they're not providing good services, and he'll completely gut leadership if they're not on board with the philosophy of where they want to be, and but a very endearing man. And so these were some of the points so he talked to us about leadership in our organizations. So I'll just hit a couple of these points. Services ultimately reflect the culture of an organization. I won't spend any time on that. Great organizations encourage mistakes and see them as learning opportunities. I think we're going to make, if you're a family member, if you're a support coordinator, if you're a provider, we're going to make mistakes as we go through this. But with that, I think there's a lot of rewards. And just see those as learning opportunities. Great organizations are never comfortable. They always have an edge to learn more, to risk more. And I think that this applies, I think that this needs to apply to DSPD, and I think this needs to apply to CMS, and I think it needs to provide to providers as well, that we shouldn't be comfortable with the status quo for people with disabilities. If we're not moving forward, we're going backwards, right? And I just really believe that we need to keep going that direction because it's the right one. And then organizational change should be a constant, not a one-time project. Transformation is going to be a process that is going to last on and on and on if we're doing it correctly. It's not just a destination, you're there, you close the building or whatever, because getting people involved in their communities is a lifelong job for all of us that are here, but it's very rewarding work. So that's it. We have like 4 minutes if anyone has any questions.
We have one more slide that talks about
we do?
conversion institutes coming up. Other than that, I think we're good. So and we did not print copies because we didn't know how many folks were going to be here. But that is the ODEP website, and we're happy to email it or whatever. But also, just so you know, there's 2 events coming up, the Vermont Conversion Institute, and I have handouts on both that one and the App City Regional Institute, which are both about provider transformation. I don't have the cost information about the App City one. You have to get on the link and register for that. But anyway, some opportunities if you're interested. So that's it. Questions?
Questions? Oh, we have a couple.
You talked about you had 70 people you transitioned out. You had 70 people you transitioned out, and then you had what, 5 that you did employment with, and you closed your day program. So where are the other 60 or 65 people? What are they doing now?
Okay.
I know you're in the process of a lot of things, but how are you doing that with them?
Okay, and I may not have pointed that out clearly. We support those people in their homes as well, so in residential settings. So we are doing, so let me give you an example. So if we were supporting somebody that came to the day program and we have the nice gym, and I feel, hopefully Serena doesn't see our yoga place ever, but we had a place for yoga. We had a gym and all that stuff. And so, for example, so somebody we would support, we're providing their services out of their home, and we help them get a gym pass at the local rec center, and they're going there to do that. We were doing, for example, like Meals on Wheels out of our day program. Now people we support are just leaving their homes. If they have routes that they like with Meals on Wheels, they're doing that. But we're also doing discovery and starting to, if you look at the document that I passed around, we're also starting to work on, the beginning of employment, but we couldn't focus on employment for 70 people all at once.
So their downtime or anytime they're not doing any of these jobs, they're in their residential setting now?
Yeah, or in community, yeah.
So if you're doing this and you're individualizing, what have you done in terms of your staffing? Have you had to staff up? How do you help somebody go to the gym when somebody else is wanting to do something else?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. What we did is we reassigned our staff from the day program that had relationships and that were with certain people that we support, and we reassigned them to their homes. And so we are sending the same staff ratios, essentially, the same number of staff that were supporting them at the day program are supporting them now at their homes. I would say too that with some of the supervisory staff and that were at the day program, they are going to people's homes and working with them on employment as well. So we have them all certified now to work on employment.
When you say certified in employment, is that the ACRE certified?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think she's telling me that we have to be quiet.
I can come ask you anything.
Oh, the mic isn't working.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do they still have time?
One more, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so you were saying the 60 or 65 people that you had in residential services. So did you support any of these who were at home living with their parents, who resided at home?
No, so we have part of that, the day program is still open, and
Okay.
that's where those folks are receiving their services. But we're starting to move those services into the community and focusing on employment. There's about, at this particular location, there's about 20 people we support there that we're working through, and those have challenges of them. We haven't spent much time on that because we just moved out those 70 folks by the end of May was our goal, and so we're just getting started there.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.